here in the UK. Well, let's speak to Bill Bowkett. He is a political reporter from Reaction and joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Bill. Let's start, first of all, with that ban from France. Many people would say it is political, given the fact there's already community transmission of the Omicron variant in France, and so these travel bans don't make that much difference. But it is a significant move in the sense of how the UK might be being viewed abroad, given those very high case numbers yesterday.
That very much is the case, Darren, and I think it also part of the growing tensions between the British and the French as well. We're seeing over the last few weeks also over the migrant crisis and also disputes over trade and fishing as well. But I think that is the perception of what a lot of countries have at the moment. A lot of the debate that we're having around Omicron, at least in regards also to South Africa, centres around Britain and how we're seeing, in my view, kind of a lot of mixed messaging between what scientists are saying, in South Africa about the cases being milder, about declining hospitalizations and also protection against vaccine. But you're seeing here in Britain a different approach, a more cautious approach, as we saw last night in the press conference with Professor Chris Whitty and Boris Johnson, sort of urging caution and in Whitty's words, prioritising social gatherings so that families don't have to experience another, nightmare before Christmas as they did last year.
Bill, when we look at the impact of this and that advice that you're talking about, I was out in central London last night. It was pretty quiet. I got the tube in this morning. It was very quiet. I'm sure that's been replicated in towns and cities up and down the country. This is having a big impact already, of course, on restaurants and bars at what should be the busiest time of the year. I must say in the last minute or so, an urgent question's been granted to the Labour Party asking the Chancellor about greater financial support for these businesses. Of course, the Chancellor is in California at the moment. A big political row over that.
He is, although he does maintain, or is saying that he's in constant communication with his staff, back in Westminster. But now what we're seeing now is the attention is turning to the plight of businesses, particularly those within hospitality, seeing a wave of cancellations, lost trade. I think the British Pub and Beer Association have said that they're serving fewer pints than normal, and net takings in cities have gone down by a quarter, and I think in the countryside by a tenth. But the Treasury have yet to unveil any big or significant rescue packages, as they already spent billions of pounds during the pandemic, to support businesses during the pandemic. But I feel what's going to happen now is that the government are almost going to be forced to redeploy some of those steps that were taken over the last 2 years to protect workers from misery. So you've had the International Monetary Fund calling for furlough or a mini furlough to be reintroduced. You're also hearing a lot of calls for VAT cuts as well, which will be ending in March, and that to be extended. And you've also seen calls also for Federation of Small Business to increase coronavirus sick pay, because what you're going to see is that with rising infections, they're going to have less staff and put in more precarious positions as well. So, public health is at the utmost importance of the cabinet right now, but moving forward new rules without any financial assistance, risks throwing the country's post-pandemic recovery further, of course.
And just very finally, Bill, many people, not everyone, and Chris Whitty didn't go as far as this last night, suggest that further restrictions might be needed. We have to wait for the hospitalisations, of course, in a couple of weeks' time, though someone would suggest maybe that's a little too late. But the further restrictions might be needed. The big question is, could Boris Johnson, if he wanted to or if he needed to, get further restrictions? Could he get it through Parliament, given the size of that rebellion the other night? He's somewhat politically boxed in, some would suggest.
No, he is, Darren, and I don't think he'll be able to do it. You saw, over 100 Tory MPs voting against the Plan B measures, restrictions of liberty, particularly when it comes to the coronavirus passports. And the other thing you're noticing a lot is becoming more evident, at least to the public, is this conflict between the medical experts, members of SAGE and ministers as well. You're seeing Chris Whitty urging for Britons to deprioritise their social lives, whether Boris declining to join Whitty, giving public a direct order and instead, asking what he did at the beginning of the pandemic and asking for, more personal responsibility from the public, to get boosted, to reduce contact, to get tested as well. And it's got to be a very convincing case, to introduce Plan C measures or to go further, than what the government have already done. And I'm not sure that Tory MPs are totally convinced right now, given the hospitalisation numbers, given also the death toll as well. And I think that is the problem. So I think it's a bit too early to, be talking a lot about these restrictions, given that we need more data. And unless it is able to, Boris Johnson is able to back it up, then Tory MPs won't be able to do it. And if he should then try and force through, further de facto restrictions, then that could cause huge problems going forward for his premiership.
Indeed. Bill, appreciate your time. Bill Bowkett there, a political reporter from Reaction from Hertfordshire. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Let's